Today is October 17, and it's been exactly 1 week since the biggest liquidation in crypto history, when $19 billion was wiped out. Everyone was betting on Hyperliquid, on Aster, on the perp dexes, and unfortunately the Binance issue with how they were pricing USDe, Ethereum stablecoin, caused the biggest liquidation ever because they used their own books to find out the prices. And today we will talk about what happened in the last week, because markets behave very interestingly after so last Friday it happened, and then we had the weekend, and then Trump tacoed and he said, oh, it's okay, we're good friends with China, and China said we're gonna fight to the end, but our door is open. So everyone is back and forth, and of course we drew a big long wick on Bitcoin chart, and usually in trading the wicks are getting filled. So that's Bitcoin and all the crypto bounced back, but in the last 3 days they've been going down. And yesterday, the night between Thursday and Friday, the prices actually went even lower. However, we're still in the range. So let's look quickly at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana, and do just quick TA to make sure where we are and understand where we stand in this cycle in general. So this is Bitcoin, and that's the week that I was talking about. We're looking at data on Binance. On some other exchanges, the week is not as long, but Binance is the one that was affected the most by the thing with the Ethereum price and the way they were pricing that collateral that caused the liquidations. And the week went all the way out of the price range. So if we will say that's the range current 108, and we wicked out of the range, and in the last 3 days we bounced from it, but we pierced the range, and it seems to be we're leaving that range. Here we had some wicks, but we didn't go lower. However, yesterday we did go lower, and right now this candle is the Saturday candle. The Friday candle already drew, and the candle closed at 106, which is lower than our previous range. So it's possible that we will be leaving this range. If we open the weekly, this candle is still being drawn, because in crypto the markets are never closing, and it will be finished drawing only on Sunday. However, we can see that so far it's pretty dangerous. This week we will disregard, because this was just volatility, but the closing of this body of the candle is very important. Where we're gonna close? Are we gonna stay in the range? If we delete this this level, we can see that, yeah, I would still stay. If we take the bottoms of these candles and the tops of these candles, so that's our box, and we don't want the weekly to be closed below that. If we close above it, then we're still in the range. If we close below, the next stop would be 94. So previous lows, because right now we're knocking into this area, right? Yeah, I would box this area. So right now we're in this. I'm thinking of if this candle more important than this area of contention point. We might have a little bit more. Well, this is just around above 100, and 100 is a very psychological mark, and piercing it below will take a lot of volume to go below it. And once we pierce it below 100, yeah, I would put this area, these candles, so 98 to 94, and we might have wicks below that area, below that box, but if we stay in this area, we are safe. And if we don't go, we're probably gonna bounce by the end of October above this level, unless there is another event, which is super unlikely, because October 10 was already a black swan event when all the crypto participants were affected in one way. Market makers had to pull out liquidity, traders had to pull, a lot of people were liquidated who were gambling on Hyperliquid and Aster. So this is where, and if we zoom out, by the way, this is nice that we're on a weekly right now, is just look at this amazing run by Bitcoin from 17K in January 2023 up to 100K right now. That's 5x in the last 2 years. And it was a pretty good run for Bitcoin, at least. Right now everyone is expecting was alt season, and the theory is that the profits from Bitcoin people will put into Ethereum and other altcoins, and so far that wasn't the case, because the main driver of this bull run was institutional investors. Now let's look at ETH. Yeah, we will keep them. We'll keep them because that is as well. ETH repeats what Bitcoin is doing, and that's the level where we want to stay. And Ethereum so far, it stays in the range. So if we look at this last area of when Ethereum turned around and went down, that is 3,800, and right now we're still holding that level. Again, this is weekly, so we need to see where this candle will close, and if we need to hope that it will close above 3,800. If we open a little bit on the lower time frame, what's happening here is, yeah, we're just bouncing. We went down here, closed the day a little bit below, but right now we went up and closing again. Still, the Friday was closed above the level 3,800, and right now we're even drawing some green candle. So Ethereum looks a little bit better than Bitcoin because it's not as obvious that the range is lost completely. And for Ethereum, the next level would be, as I marked here before, 2,800. Solana, not dropping, not like racing in front of the Bitcoin, and not as well. It stays in the range. It didn't go below the previous lows on October 10 and October 11. We're still pretty good. We're staying in the range. We're not dropping crazy. What's the range for Solana? Maybe on the weekly it would be more visible. Yeah, that is more visible. So we have this high, this area where Solana turned. We box it out, and these are the levels that Solana has to hold. The wicks we'll discard because of the volatility. So this candle, this weekly candle, oh, that's a weekly candle, needs to close above 189, above 184.89. Above this area is good. Anything below that, it's bad. And the previous week was a red candle, and this week seems to be a red candle. So two bearish candles in the row. And if we look the previous history where it was closing with two bearish, well, that was all the way at the top when we had this big rally. And let's see, two candles close, one bull and two bearish candles. Before, I don't see anywhere similar setup, but this might resemble a little bit of this. When we reach the peak, bear, small undecisive candle, and then two bear candles. So you can see that the second one closed all the way down, much lower than what we have right now. But overall, everything is down. Just on a daily, 1, 2, 3, 4 days, Solana was going down, and it's holding the level because it was already at this level. And if it didn't draw a candle like this, that means the level is holding, because current price, it's exactly the price that the market is willing to pay for Solana. It means that there are no more sells in this area and there is no more buys in this area. It's right now, that's the equilibrium, the 84. And this is already the second touch. This was the first touch, this is the second touch. So right now it's looking pretty strong to stay at this level. The price was trying to go lower with this candle, but bulls won that battle, and we stay above. And right now we're going into the weekend, and volatility would be lower, and we will be looking at the evening on Sunday when Asian market will be live to see if the crypto will go down even lower. So that's the quick TA of what's happening with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. One thing I wanted to show you is for Bitcoin, one of the most important macro indicators that you should be looking at is global liquidity. Let's open without the drawings. It's an indicator. You can add it by going here and then typing in global indicator, global liquidity, not on this plus, but at the indicators right here, global liquidity index by quantitative something, 9,000 likes. It will show up here, and this is this blue line, and you should be always looking at this chart from time to time, and you need to zoom out at the bigger high level, high frame to see what's happening with this global liquidity index. We were in the range going down, and recently, to be specific, roughly around April, May is when this global liquidity index, well, to be exactly in March, then when we had this breakout from the previous range, this is how we would draw it. So 1, 2, 3, 4 touches, but instead of going down here, it broke out. And we're still staying above, and it looks like we're started to range. And I'm gonna create a separate video talking about this global liquidity index, what it means, how does it consist, what does it consist of, and how's it being calculated, and why is it so important. But the good thing right now, what we can say is, now I will pull up the chart with all of the drawings, because this is what I marked on my, I will move this around. This is what I marked on the chart, is this line. When the global liquidity peaks, it takes a little bit of time, and then the Bitcoin peaks. And what I calculated is from this peak of the global liquidity, 110 days later, this line, that's when the Bitcoin going to peak. And I had these lines before the chart was here, and look how perfect the Bitcoin price ended up acting. Here is the daily view of Bitcoin. This was the peak, and then of the global liquidity, and I extended it to exactly, well, this says 117 bars, but this was the peak of the Bitcoin. Basically, when there are lots of money in the system all over the world, not just in US, Jerome Powell and Scott Bessent, but everywhere in the world, that liquidity ends up flowing into speculative assets, and that's what we see. So liquidity is increasing, then it flows into Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin tops. And the second line that I marked was because of that breakout that I was telling you about earlier on the liquidity index. We had this second peak on the liquidity index that was not supposed to be there, and I marked as well from this peak as well, a little bit shorter, because usually everything is diminishing returns. So here I marked 90 days, and again, it almost hit that exact moment when it would be the second hit point of the Bitcoin high price. And just because the liquidity is not going down as drastic as it was before, in my belief, we have this third peak here. So this would be the first one that played out. This is the second that played out. And look at this. This is the third one that played out. The global liquidity didn't go down like this, like it did before. What it's doing now, it's ranging, and it's ranging much flatter. And that is why my bull case for we are not going to drop anywhere lower from now on. And Bitcoin is not going to drop below 100, or even if it does, it's not going to stay there for a long time, because there is just a lot of money in the system and they continue flowing into the system. So that's quick TA. In addition, the other thing that I wanted to show is the fear and greed index. It's an absolute, it's not in the extreme fear. So extreme fear would be this red area. We are in the fear territory, which is the orange. Fear is, people are too negative about crypto, and I can see it on my timeline that people are just saying this bull run is over, the perps ruined us, basically just buy Bitcoin and Zcash and nothing else will survive. everyone will vamp you, the VCs. There is no chance to make money in altcoins. And it's understandable because just a week ago, there was this huge liquidation event, and gamblers and people who are addicted to gambling on crypto markets, they lost a lot of money, a lot of accounts were wiped, and hence we have this super negative sentiment right now in the market. And that is exactly the time when you should be placing the bets. If you trade off the fear and greed index, you would be, if you just set your trading thesis is to place bets when the fear and greed index is in fear territory or extreme fear territory, this would be only the second time when throughout 2025 where you even make the bets. Previously, it wasn't in so low, was in end of February, March, and April, this area. And you can see that when we reached this 21, the index was 21, Bitcoin was 84. And when we reached absolute bottom of the fear and greed index, 15, the Bitcoin price was 78. So from 84 to 78, that's only 6K difference. 6K difference out of 80 is roughly, it's like 7% if I'm not mistaken. It's roughly 7%. So only 7% lower from the fear and greed index 21. Why I'm saying to you that is because Bitcoin might not go anywhere lower than 7 to 9% from the current price. And if we'll use that same logic, and okay, let me check quickly. So here it was 78 and we went briefly 76. So quick calculation, 8 out of 84 is 9% actually, so roughly 10%. Let's go back to chart. Let's go to Bitcoin. From current level, let's see what is 10%. 10% brings us to 95K. And that is the absolute lowest if we continue going into the extreme fear territory. Right here, that's when it was extreme fear. It went here twice, one time, second time, and in trading, just like the MACD divergences, when you look, one indicator basically tops not tops, bottoms, but the price already doesn't go lower than the second touch. So even though we touched it second time, the price didn't go lower for Bitcoin, and from then we started this run from 76 to 120. And another reason why I think that we are not going into the extreme fear is because in March and April this year, we went in this territory, extreme fear, because we came all the way from the extreme greed. And again, when you look at markets, when something goes super high, it's just the laws of physics, it falls lower and more violently. And in our case, where we are right now, we didn't go from the extreme greed. We went from just the greed territory and not even extreme greed. And since June, July. Since July, we're just slowly decreasing. There is no hope in the market. We had this big, small pump that happened just at the first half of the October, because everyone is like, this pump is dedicated, like everyone was expecting alt season in Q4, but that didn't happen. So we are not coming from extreme greed. The rise was not as violent, and therefore the fall would be not as violent. And right now we're at 25, which is the lowest, which is the new low in the recent drawdown. And I don't expect that we're gonna go to the extreme fear. And together with the global liquidity index and what's happening, remember, right now it's October, we have November, and then in December we have interest cut. And right now the government is shut down, so Bureau of Labor and Statistics, I believe, they are not working, so we might not get even some data on the unemployments. and some other data that usually the market is like to watch, the macro data. And that also can play out in this narrative of we don't have any data, so market doesn't go down as much, or people more fearful and they think that situation is really dire and bad, but the reality is we're not gonna get the real numbers, and people gonna sell, Bitcoin gonna go down to 95K, but in reality everything is not as bad as it is. So 28, fear, again, we don't spend a lot of time in this area, and this is the area where you need to buy. If you still have anything left, this is the area where you make your bets. It's still not the place where I would buy with leverage. If I would have another touch in the extreme fear territory, or even the first touch in extreme fear, that's when you can place some of the leveraged buys. But again, right now we are in the range for Bitcoin. Now, when Bitcoin starts breaking out from the 108, well, it's already 106. But if Bitcoin goes down to 100 and touches 100, that's when people might start panicking and they will be saying, okay, that's the end of the bull run. And if we establish a lower low, that's when you can go and gamble with a little bit of leverage. An area of 95, 96, that's the area where if you are risk averse, I would personally go to with a little bit higher leverage, because the chances that we move below 95 are, on my opinion, is not as high. Because again, you need to understand that below the level of 95 is where Michael Saylor is buying, and this whole bull run was fueled by institutional investors. So for price to go lower than 95, 96, below 90, that means those institutional investors need to start selling, and they're not selling because that's not their policy. They're not some trader in their bedroom trading back and forth with leverages. They're just buying and they're doing the long-term play. And that's the good thing for us, because that ensures that Bitcoin stays where it is. And the other big narrative that's happening right now is gold. Gold is at all-time high. We have on the news images how people lines up to buy physical gold, which is just mind-boggling. Well, people are always late, just like on crypto Twitter. When you see a ticker on Twitter already, that's already too late. If you buy, you'll be exit liquidity. Same with gold. Gold pumped in the last 2 years because of all the uncertainties. The recession conversation was brought so many times. So gold on all those news, and of course the debasement of dollar. Trump was supposed to not print dollars, but he's printing the same way he was printing in his first term, the same way Biden was printing. They want to print. He's pressuring Jerome to lower the interest rate so he can print even more money. How they can print money is there's two ways. They can either decrease interest rates so that banks start borrowing more, money becomes cheaper, or they can pass bills with big trillion number spending bills by the government, and that's exactly what they did. That's when Elon was saying how it's what's the words he was using, something filled, I don't remember exactly, but that was so funny. And that's kind of when he left and he was attacking Trump because he was campaigning on the spending cuts and that the federal government is so bloated, but they still passed that bill because every president wants to spend a lot of money by the federal government, have low interest rates, so economy is booming, everything is booming, and they're remembered as the best presidents ever in the history. Unfortunately, the same cycle continues again and again. And gold is at all-time high because of this, and Bitcoin is number one slogan for Bitcoin, or how you can describe Bitcoin to someone who never knew about Bitcoin or heard about Bitcoin, is digital gold. That's the number one, that's the top description of for Bitcoin. So the whole narrative of Bitcoin following the gold price is just too strong of a combination. The gold is limited because it's at least on Earth, gold is limited. Outside of the Earth, in the galaxies, there is the thing of diamonds. They are very rare on Earth, but everywhere in the world it's carbon, and there's so many diamonds out in the world, but on Earth they are rare. Same for gold. Gold is limited on Earth, and Bitcoin 21 million only available. After that, the price gonna go higher, and there will be pricing individual satoshis, but for now it's limited. So I don't see how Bitcoin will diverge too much from gold prices. And if gold establishes all, right now it's a little bit in the correction. Look at this run. At the beginning of the year, it was 2,600. Is that a bubble? 61% in 1 year. That's for sure a bubble. Has it ever went this high, this fast? Yeah, right here. 30% in 2024. Never before. This is just either the dollar is being printed crazy or we are in a bubble. It's one of these two. You can probably overlay a chart of US government spending, but to me it looks something like this. Look at that. Small impulse, then big spending, big increase. That was in the 80s, and then we went down for 2 years and we reached the bottom 2 years later. So I would say this is that big impulse first, and then the huge run up. Again, it might be because of the spending. The same what happened here. How long we will have to wait? That's 800 days to February 2028. So that's in 2 years, yeah. However, again, if we went this much high, it's possible that we will go lower and we stay lower for longer. But this chart is just ridiculous. And gold having this price and Bitcoin is not following is just impossible to me. So that's again me being bullish on the fact that we continue increasing in price for Bitcoin. And even though we are touching the resistance line on our monthly trending line, we have this news of jewelers and watch dealers melting their gold watches, because now some of those gold watches, because of the amount of diamonds they have, because how custom they are, the more customized they are, the lower the price is. And if you just melted your watch, you might get more money, cash, USD value, out of just the gold itself than from the craftsmanship and the watch itself. And that is those kind of news, when you see news like this, that's what tells you that usually there is a bubble in some area. Now, can we go double from this area? Absolutely. But this is the time, if you were in gold before, absolutely the time to de-risk and take some profits or completely exit. And it's definitely not the time to enter the markets right now. That was the news that posted by Melo, is just more bearish news on my timeline. That's the narrative of the fear and greed index being so low, and when the bear market eventually comes, the only thing you should be holding is Bitcoin, dump the rest. So when someone tells you dump the rest and they are from CT, Melo is part of the potion, the sniper for meme coins. That's how you know that the timeline is negative and bullish and bearish, and the sentiment is as low as it gets, because anyone who's in the coins, in crypto, and specifically sells you a software for sniping coins, for them to be bearish, the sentiment is negative. That's the whole point. And the last news is that I thought is notable for today is that Solana is now on Uniswap. So Uniswap is one of the first. There's always like some other DEXs, some other very first one that weren't popular, but Uniswap is the biggest DEX on Ethereum. They were the project that created liquidity pools, where you don't need the order book for exchanges, where you don't need just buys and sells and then the market maker, but you can actually create a pool. There is the pair of currencies being deposited, of cryptocurrencies being deposited in that pool, and then their price is decided by the formula X times Y equals K. That's make sure that whatever X equals, it's always K divided by Y, and y is always equals k divided by x. So that's the k is constant, and that determines the price of the cryptocurrency. So, but they were on Ethereum. Uniswap is on Ethereum, and they didn't have Solana on it. And now, and of course we have Jupiter, the major DEX and liquidity provider for, and Radium and Meteora for Solana. But now Solana is on Uniswap, which is amazing. It unleashes more liquidity into Solana network. And now you can, the bunch of DeFi protocols that are using Uniswap pools to do staking and lending and borrowing, now all that ecosystem now is interchangeable and can be transferred into Solana and take some of the liquidity from Solana. So that's amazing news. And that's also good for Uniswap as a token, because the price is gonna go higher because people will be using more and more, and just shows you that there are some projects that are continue building, continue innovating, and this is just for Uniswap to go across other chains. And some projects, most of the projects, they're not delivering anything. So very bullish on Bitcoin, very bullish on Uniswap, and of course very bullish on Ethereum, because this whole narrative of the DeFi and institutional investors coming into crypto, Bitcoin is the first stop, but Ethereum is the second stop. Props and congrats to Uniswap to launch. Quickly, let's look at the Uniswap price. I believe it's a really good Uniswap, it's a good project. So that's something that you can buy on spot and just hold it. So it peaked at 9, December 8, then it collapsed, then it reached again, giving us this double top. Very common bearish signal is the double top, is something reaches the prices, collapses down because it's just too high of a value, and then still reaches again, but a little bit lower. That is a perfect setup for short if you are degenerate enough to even touch the short button, but I know you are. And yeah, that was December 11, December 12, that's when it started to collapse. So not just AI meme coin started to collapse in the middle of December, but also projects like Uniswap. And right now, look at this. Look how low this project is, the coin. I believe Uniswap can be named, it's definitely top 10. If you consider apps, like the actual applications that people are using, not the layer 1s or layer 2 infrastructure framework, you can say, chains and tokens, but this is actually a product that built on top of crypto. And that's the infrastructure of your future. That's all of the exchanges. You take Charles Schwab, Ameritrade, Robinhood, Citadel, all of this together on crypto. Number one player, the biggest player, is Uniswap. And right now, these levels are absolute beauty. If you still have any money, look at this. This is weekly level. We can open even monthly levels. And nothing terrible happened with Uniswap. They just continue innovating, continue building, and this level is the same as November 2023. That's even before the Trump election, before the Genius Act, before all of the innovation and legislation that happened. Biden was suing everyone left and right. Uniswap is based in New York. The Uniswap labs themselves were sued, even though they provide the pools, the trading infrastructure. It's all public protocol. The district, there is this southern district in Manhattan, in New York, that usually fights financial crimes. They were suing Uniswap, and that's when the price went down to the bottoms here in the 2022, 2023, and the range was from, at all those negative news, this was the range, is 7 and 5. Between 7 and 5 it was going, then it lost the range, but then went back to it. Well, it took 2 months for it to went back, almost 3. August, September, October, but in November it went back into the range. And again, we are in the middle of that range of all of that negativity. So again, at the times like this, with the fear and greed index being in the fear, that is the time to buy. Outside, you will not have any other opportunities. Once the fear and greed index goes back into the neutral, goes back into the positive, into the greed, extreme greed, that right now, that's the times to buy. And in 2025, there was only 2 opportunities when that was possible. Was May and April. Fear and greed touched extreme fear, and right now we're between 2 interest cuts. Trump is going to win midterms. He's doing all these peace deals, and everything else seems to be positive, unless we have another black swan event in the macro. But to me, Uniswap is a great buy right now.